We are live. Welcome to episode 20. This is the 20th live of Porterhouse and Teal, and I am excited to have on a special guest from Grey and Brianna. This is Brianna, who's a homesteader, a mom, an entrepreneur, homeschooler, homeschool mom, and a blogger and a new YouTuber. And Brianna may be somewhat unfamiliar to the folks that tune into this broadcast, but she's very familiar to me because she's my daughter. And I'm grateful to have her on tonight. So welcome, Brianna.
Hi.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to first talk about, I guess, was you had started out as a content creator some years ago. You had a blog, Grey and Brianna, and then you decided at some point to step away from that. It was actually taking off and was becoming pretty successful, and then you decided that you'd step away. Why'd you make that decision?
Yeah, I started that blog when Grey and I got married. We both started homesteading in 2010 and then got engaged, got married, and I started that blog as a way to stay in contact with family members and friends and just kind of document what we were doing with our garden, and I would post new recipes. And at the time, it wasn't something that was super common for people that were our age to be interested in those types of things. And it really was a hobby. I posted every day. And then we had our first son and then had our daughter. That was my second child. And at the same time, it started taking off, as you said, and becoming quite a lot. And for me, it was a hobby. And I saw other bloggers that started around the same time that I did. And they were diving into SEO and really doing something with their sites. And that, to be honest, kind of intimidated me. Learning SEO and learning different tactics to monetize the blog and to make it a business was something that I didn't necessarily want to dive in at the time. And with the birth of my daughter, I'm kind of a nostalgic person, and I didn't want to miss out. I didn't want to miss out with my children because the blog, with its popularity, started to consume more of my time. And it came to a point, do I want to dive into learning SEO and doing the blog thing, or do I want to just step away and raise my children and continue living our lives, building our homestead, and just enjoying these precious moments that everybody says goes too quickly? And so in 2015, after my daughter was born, I stepped away. I wrote a final blog post and said goodbye to all of my readers. A lot of them were local. And so I've stayed in contact with them, and they watched our journey since I've been offline from 2015 until now.
Yeah. Content creation definitely takes a lot of commitment, and I'm sure, as you well know, I think that, coming back, things probably aren't any less hectic for you in your daily life. So what was the decision from the point at which you stepped away and then kind of reinvigorated yourself, I guess, and then you decided to come back? How long have you been going again with the blog?
I started it back up in 2021, and what had happened was I had a lot of piqued interest around that time. A lot of people that I knew in real life were asking me. In fact, that old blog was still up, and I had commenters commenting all of a sudden started commenting all of a sudden. And I realized over the past decade that a lot of the questions that people had, I did have some answers for, and that I had something to contribute. But during that 5-year period, we went on to have 2 more children. I have 4 children now, and we're homeschooling, which isn't something I was doing necessarily in 2015. And so I talked to Grey, my husband, and I we had made the decision that if I was to revamp the blog, if you will, that I would be starting a blogging business and not a hobby blog. And so I did a total audit of the old blog. I basically gutted it. I dove into SEO. I learned everything that I could about running a blogging business, about SEO, about online marketing, about everything, because to give that amount of time, I needed to make it worth my while for my family, because my time is in, heavy demand here at home with everything we have going on. But part of me just wanted to share in this way as well. And so I wanted to do it efficiently and wisely. And that's what I did.
Yeah, that's super good. I want to say hi to a couple of people that have popped in. What's up, Skeins girl? How you doing, Laura from Potpourri of Life? And then Brady's in the house. So what's up, Braid? Yeah, that's super good, Brianna. I think it's one of those things that as a content creator, you have to kind of, understand that there's a cost to doing everything. And, obviously you recognize that because you're putting a lot more effort where the effort is needed. And so what's your ultimate goal with the blog? Obviously you've been doing it 2 years now. And let me just say, for anybody who is unfamiliar with her blog, I did put her links in the description of this particular broadcast. So you can go on, and I've linked to her YouTube channel, which is basically just brand new. She just started doing YouTube, but she's been doing this blog for a couple of years now. And there's a link to that. And I just want to say that it's pretty dialed. It's a pretty good resource. So, yeah, who are you looking to reach in this blog? Who is it for?
So initially, when I started back up, I had a heart for mothers that were balancing homesteading, because for a long time, I didn't know anybody else that was interested in living this lifestyle while raising children. And so I felt like I had one foot in the modern world, and then another foot in, really having an interest in canning and food preservation and learning these old skills. And for a mother, that is a lot. And so I have a lot of resources for mothers, as well as as for homestead children. So clearly I have a passion for homeschooling and what that looks like as a homesteader, because it is different when you are planning your school curriculum around harvest time and around planting time and getting that all in and what that might look like. So initially, it was for mothers, homesteading mamas, and homesteading kids. And since then, a lot of the people that started reading the blog are interested in my long-term food storage pantry. Gray and I we do keep a large pantry, and I consider it a rotating pantry. We don't buy a bunch of long-term food and just keep it and never use it. We just keep an abundance and store it properly so that it lasts a long time and cycle through it. And so I have certain methods for how I manage that in our home, and cooking from scratch, of course. And I have a lot of recipes on the blog. And so that's who I initially was reaching, but then I had an audience that was a surprise.
Right. Yeah. So just briefly, don't get too nerdy with it, but talk about SEO a little bit, because I don't know if people really understand that, because it translates over to YouTube and content creation there as well. It's all based on search engine optimization, everything that we do on these platforms, but you've dove pretty deep into it, and I think you understand it pretty well. So if you can just kind of summarize it, don't get down in the weeds on it, but
Okay.
just so that people understand what it is and how it kind of works, right?
Okay. Yes, SEO is something that intimidated me, like I said, for a long time in the beginning stages of my blog, but I realized its importance. And so I did dive pretty deep. But for someone that doesn't know anything about it, and I think in today's world, it's something that's vital for any entrepreneur to know the basis of SEO. And a simple way to put it is that you're trying to make these big search engines happy, right? Because their reputation's on the line. You're making this content and they look bad if you're going to send someone to your site and it doesn't have the answer they were looking for. And so really looking at it through that lens of, I am creating content so that I am helping these bigger platforms. And part of that is filling the holes. So I don't write when I was doing the audit of our site, part of that was removing any old content that wasn't helpful or necessary. And so I aim to fill holes. So I do keyword research, which is I research phrases that people are searching for that there are not a lot of answers currently on the web. And I write no content that there's already plenty of answers for. So if I see that someone's done a really good job, I don't go and write a piece of content that's already exists. So what I'm doing, part of my job is to look for what need has not been met that people are searching for. I find those keywords, and if it's something that I can speak to, then I do my best to write a well-informed article that Google's going to say, this is going to answer the question of the searcher. And by doing that, you get on page one, which, if you're interested in blogging or even having a business, is vital.
Yeah, and page one is the first page that's popping up when somebody's typing in that keyword, correct?
Right. And the goal is not just to be on page one, but to be within the first three searches, because thinking about how you use the platform, I don't scroll past the first handful of results. And so no one else is either. So you could write a pretty darn good article, but if you're not within the top, I would say 1 to 5 results, I mean, you're going to have very low traffic. And so it's a competitive market, but I would encourage anybody that if you do, have a desire to learn SEO, it's once you get it, you get it. And everything, I look at the world through SEO now. So when I'm writing a post, I started for the Grey and Brianna website, but I'm taking these tactics, and I help my husband. He's a entrepreneur. He's a stonemason contractor, and I've been implementing some of these tactics for his business. And I run a local photography site, and I'm implementing some of these tactics for that other site and seeing really good results. So once you get it, you get it, and it's very effective and not a waste of time to learn SEO.
Right. I think that's very, very smart. I think that a lot of people get on the internet, they get on, and they put out content and they don't really understand the game and how the game is being played. And they wonder, well, gee, my videos aren't being watched, or, I just don't have that much traction. And it really boils down to the fact that YouTube's going to show your content to people if the people respond well to your content. They're going to show impressions to people. And then if they don't initially respond well to those impressions, they're going to stop showing it to people. And then it's going to kind of die on the vine. But once YouTube actually finds the right fit for your content, if your content is good, your content will continually be shown. And it's just an interesting game to, like, once you realize the vastness of it. And I think a lot of people don't approach it in that way. And it's very smart that you do, and try to learn as much as you can as a content creator, because anybody can put content out there, but is it something that is going to be providing value to somebody? And that's really what the game is all about, because people go on YouTube or they go on a blog because they want to learn something. They want to be either educated, or in the case of YouTube, they want to also maybe be entertained or inspired. Those are really the only reasons that they go on there. So I think it's very smart in what you're doing and learning as much as you can. And I think the results that you've had thus far are starting to show. I will say that it's interesting that if you had have stuck with it when you first started, you'd probably be long beyond what you are now. You'd probably be huge, but it's just the fact that that time in your life, apparently that wasn't the right fit.
Yeah.
Correct?
And I will I will say that I've thought about this a great deal. And like I said in the beginning, the blog was a hobby blog. And not only did I share recipes and what we were doing on our homestead and documenting our first chicken flock, I also shared my children and my personal life. And that is what it was so appealing to local people that knew us. But I actually feel really grateful that I stepped away because I have a different perspective on that now. And I suppose that our blog is probably less interesting to people that know us because I am not out there to share about myself. I am out there
Yeah.
to see a need and I write about that. And unless you're interested in searching for a recipe or homesteading or something like that, you probably wouldn't want to visit the website because that's the content I write about. And so,
Yeah.
though I think you're right that it's kind of a long game. And if I was to have done it over this last decade and continued on that, I would be further ahead on my career. However, I do feel grateful to have that space and that breathing room to prioritize what I wanted to be sharing online and what I didn't. Because when you
Right.
get caught up in it, it just kind of keeps going. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Mhm.
so, Skane's girl, she said, and that's a shame. I have 100 cute puppy videos pushed at me and not information and not informative info that I need. So yeah, that's just kind of the way the game's played. They're gonna put content before people to try to see how they respond to it. If you don't respond to puppy videos, they're gonna probably stop showing you the puppy videos because they're just trying. That's all YouTube's trying to do is just to find the right fit for the right person. If you're a person that likes to watch shorts, you're gonna see a lot of shorts. If you're a person that likes to watch 8-minute videos, they're gonna find you the person that likes to watch 8-minute videos in a particular niche or genre. So it's very, very technical. There's when you get deep into the analytics of content creation, it is mind-boggling how much of a business it is. And yeah, I think it's worth talking about. And I think people, if they are interested in progressing further in this arena as a content creator, they probably need to learn SEO and some of those other things. But
I would say I won't go too much longer on it, but
right,
if somebody is interested in content creation or starting a business, if you're selling something, uh, I would avoid just hopping onto Instagram and Facebook, which is what a lot of people do. I see tons of people spending so much time creating Instagram posts and Instagram reels and Facebook posts, and that content isn't owned by you and it's not evergreen. So the effort that I'm putting into my blog posts, I'm seeing return when I'm in the kitchen with my kids and I can see that it's continuing to renew and that effort isn't down the drain where
right.
I do have an Instagram page, but I feel that it's a little bit like a hamster wheel, and at any time Instagram can do something weird and all of your efforts are for nothing. And so
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
that's the same. That's the same with YouTube too, though. I mean, you need to do if you can't just rely on the money that you get through monetization through the AdSense program or whatever. You need to diversify as a business owner. But let's
yeah.
not go too much further into that. We can beat up SEO all day, but I did want to ask you, how do you manage time? Because you're not any less busy. So what's your number one tip for managing time? Time
Yes.
management is something everybody deals with. So what's your go-to?
Yeah, this is another topic I could talk all day about because I am a student of time management. I love this.
What's up, Chuck?
I love this. This type of information because I am always looking for a new method. Because there's all of us are not necessarily struggling with time, but we're all busy. Everybody is busy. No matter what you have going on, and so what I like to do personally to help me not get overwhelmed is I write a huge list and then I break that list down into the various categories of my life. So it might look like motherhood, and I take being a wife pretty seriously. And so my marriage and helping my husband with his business and the blog and the photography site. So I break that down into categories and then prioritize. It's all about what you prioritize. And I'm just now realizing the power of hiring as well, if it's possible. And so getting help where you can is also very powerful and needed past a certain point. But prioritization is the name of my game.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something we all deal with, and however we manage to break up those 24 hours is, where we've placed our emphasis and priority. So always interested to hear tips from people who are doing things in a different way. And some people use lists. Some people start with, hitting the low hanging fruit first, and then they, so they can at least show some progress. And then they wind up ticking off some of the larger projects or things like that. So yeah, let's move on from that and talk about homeschooling. You are someone who's decided to homeschool your children, although you weren't homeschooled yourself. And what was the decision behind deciding to homeschool your children?
Yeah, so 2017 was when we needed to kind of make this decision. We had sent our son to a private preschool when he was 4, and upon him going to kindergarten, my husband and I started talking, what are we going to do? Are we going to send him to public school? Are we going to send him to private school? And just through that conversation, it was actually Gray that brought up homeschooling to me, because it was not at all on my radar. In fact, when he had said, what about homeschooling? I immediately rejected the idea. I said, I cannot do that. I don't have the skill set. I wasn't knowledgeable about homeschooling. To be honest, I thought from my memories of being a kid that homeschoolers were socially awkward. And so I was very turned off by the idea. And then when we started looking at our options further, and through more discussion and research and learning about what homeschooling actually is in 2017, I started warming up to the idea. And I thought, he said, we don't have to do it forever. Just take it year by year. It's kindergarten. If you don't like it, you can send him to first grade at a school. And so I thought, I can handle kindergarten. I think I know kindergarten level knowledge. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so we still are on a year by year basis, but I have gained, confidence in being a homeschool mom. And some of the reasons that we initially got caught up when sending our child to kindergarten was, one, the technology was an issue to me. I was seeing children ahead of my children, and the freedom and the access they had to technology before their brains were ready was concerning. Safety, and then my just mama heart was not ready to be away from my child for 8 hours a day. It didn't feel right to me to give his best hours to someone else that didn't know him, didn't, love him like I did. And so those were our initial reasons. Now, as I've learned more about homeschooling, I have many more reasons. It's a soapbox for me. I could just talk about it all day long. But that's kind of how we got into it. And my oldest is 9 now, going on 10 this year, and it's going very well. And it's a decision that I am so, so thankful that we made.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's something that, I was raised in public school, and, both my folks worked, and, both of us early on were working outside of the home, and we sent you guys to public school, and you guys had an upbringing in the public school arena. And, later on, mom was able to stay home, which was cool. And at least there was somebody at the house. So that was something that we worked toward. And it was nice to be able to at least have one parent that wasn't gone forever, but you guys were still out of the house in school. And, my thoughts on the whole thing have really evolved as time has gone on, because of what I've really been able to see. And it's more about what I've seen with regard to public school or government school, however you want to, define it. but the curriculum's changed. And, I don't know, you can probably elaborate on that, but there was not anywhere, there was no social agenda stuff when I went to school. That wasn't being pushed as curriculum when I was a
Mhm.
student. And I don't know if you guys were starting to see that when you were in school, or that was something that came after, but it's certainly an issue now. And I'm grateful that you've made the decision to homeschool the kids, because I think it's one of the best things that a parent can do, is to spend that amount of time with their kid and educate their kids in a way that they want to educate their kids, and not rely on somebody else and send your kids off for 9 hours a day. That's not a knock against anybody else who makes that decision, because we all make decisions. I'm just saying I'm grateful that that's something you've been able to do for your children, right? At
Mhm.
this point. So when you were in school, were you starting to see those social cues being implemented and pushed in the curriculum?
Right. So as a young child, it's not something that I can remember. I really don't remember that in elementary school or middle school, but I did see that in high school. So I had actually a couple encounters with teachers because yeah, it was happening in high school, and especially when I went to college. Uh, it definitely, I'm surprised that I made it out with the beliefs that I do, because that there's a lot of kids that were raised in, good homes, and their parents have a certain set of values, and then they go to these schools and they come out with completely different values. And so I would say it started when I was in high school that I noticed, and college. And it is something that we consider with our children, that the things that they're teaching, we look at homeschooling as a mentorship with our children. Our main goal is to teach them, to spend time with them and mentor them and teach them things we know, but also to teach them how to think, and teach them how to think for themselves and research certain topics. And I think that biases can happen in all kinds of directions. And I would rather bet on having my children with me, and because I love them and I'm going to teach them the best I know, and I'm going to put people in their lives that maybe don't know something that I don't do, or I mean, that know something that I don't, that can also teach them. So I think homeschooling is a community effort as well. We're always looking for groups and different people that we can bring into our children's lives. And as a parent, we get to choose that. But when you send them to a school, you have no control over who's pouring into your children and the values and the beliefs that they're impressing on them. And
Yeah.
so it's definitely accelerated since since I noticed it, though it probably was going on, I just wasn't aware.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah, it seems like to me there's just a lot of benefits to it, because if you look at it, kids can get in homeschooling, they can get their homework done in a couple hours, maybe 3 hours in a day, and then they've got the rest of the day to do other activities and do things that are going to develop them in a way that are going to make sense. Because in public school we send them off, we spend nine hours in school a day or whatever, and riding back and forth on the bus or whatever, and your day is basically consumed by going and sitting, in a classroom for 45 minutes, and the bell goes off and you go somewhere else, you learn something else that you don't really have any interest in learning. And that's the biggest takeaway, is a lot of the things that we wind up learning in public school, we don't even apply in our actual like real lives when we become adults. And that's
Yeah.
just the reality of it. We're forced to learn certain things that I can say for a fact that I did not use, in
Right.
my career as a firefighter. I just didn't. It wasn't something that I had an interest in learning. So therefore I didn't learn it, even though they
Mhm.
said I had to learn it. It went in one ear. I learned it for the test, and then it was something I didn't really care about. But if you can
Mhm.
provide something that kids actually are interested in, and they develop their own thoughts, like you said. I think that's really awesome and cool. And I never had that perspective, I guess, growing up, just because of my upbringing,
Right.
but it's super cool. So what's the biggest, wait a minute, let me get to some of these comments here. Potpourri says that she personally went to public school, pulled our girls due to an interesting school situation. Things are getting a bit more challenging today for parents. Yeah, I would say that they probably are considerably more challenging, just in the things that I've heard. It's not that we have children in school or any of that, but just hearing some of the stuff that's being pushed out there, it is quite interesting.
Mhm.
What do we got here? Yeah, my grandchildren are in public school in the South Louisiana, where an agenda isn't being pushed yet. That is the case in other parishes. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I mean, everybody's got their choices to make on that. And what's the best part of homeschooling, in your opinion?
I would say it's the time with my children. I'm gaining so many hours with them, quality time that I'm able to teach them things and build this relationship with them. So much of homeschooling is actually a relationship between you and your child, to get to know them, to see their needs, to meet their needs, to provide them with resources that they're actually interested in, and watch them flourish. And so for me, my favorite thing is to know my children so deeply that I can see their interest and provide them to excel and take off where they are strong, and then bring up the rear of things that they are going to need to know how to do, and help them along where they might have gotten left behind
Mhm.
if if they were just in a classroom of 30.
Right.
And I will say, I do like to preface, I don't think homeschooling is for everyone. For us, it's working right now. If at any point I felt like my children would be better served in another environment, I would make sure I facilitate that. And so it's working for us right now, and that is my experience. Though I think children can learn and do very well in environments as long as the parent is vigilant and, loving that child enough to know what's going on, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I would agree with that. I mean, it's not a one size fits all. It's not an answer for everybody, but it certainly is an option, and it's an option that's exercised probably more so now than ever, just based on what's happened in the last 3 years. I think there's been an explosion in the amount of people that have decided to homeschool their children in the last 3 years. And um, yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thing. And like I say, I'm wanted to kind of pick your brain on that. What's the biggest challenge to homeschooling from your perspective?
Right.
What's the hardest thing?
So I say, this sounds bad. I say this to people that are asking me about homeschooling, that it is the hardest part of my day, and not that I don't enjoy it, and not that it's not the most valuable thing I do in a day. It's hard because it is relational. And so there's a lot of emotions involved. There's a great responsibility that I feel as the primary influence in my children's lives. And so it is a weight emotionally. And so I would say that balancing everything with it is probably the most challenging thing. And meeting all of their needs at once can be difficult. So just developing the systems and constantly being flexible to change what isn't working. What we were
Mhm.
doing a year ago is not what I'm doing now, because we have another school age child that I'm bringing in this year. And so being flexible can be difficult, because then that shifts around, other things that you have going on that you're trying to balance. So,
Right, right.
mhm.
Skane's girl wants to know, how many years have you homeschooled now?
Well, I would say that I homeschooled since birth, because I do consider the moment you have that child, you're teaching them things. However, my first child was school aged in 2017, and it's now 2023. And so that's 6 years that I have been doing what we call paperwork. I am reluctant to say school because I'm of the belief that we are doing school all the time. When my son is out in the yard building something, that is engineering and that is school. And so we do about 2 to 3 hours of paperwork, which I call it that because we are both entrepreneurs and paperwork's a part of our job. And so when there might be some resistance to sitting down and doing reading or writing, we point out that we still read and write and need this for our occupation. And so it frames it better for our children so they don't see school as something that's bad or hard. It's necessary to learn these essential skills. So 6
Right.
years I've been teaching a school-age child, but schooling starts at birth.
Right. Right. No, that's good. That's good insight.
Mhm.
I'm somebody who's interested in homeschooling my child. I don't know a lot about it. I do have an interest in doing it. What would you tell me, Brianna? What one piece of advice would you give me if I'm somebody who's actually wanting to do this?
Right.
And you could tell me one thing, what would that be?
One thing, if you're just starting, is to talk to women that are ahead. That I've gained the most value from. I constantly want to pick the brain of a woman that has raised her children and homeschooled them all the way. So build community, talk to other homeschooling moms, read books on the subject, get inspired and encouraged, continue learning about it, and take it year by year and assess your child's needs. Don't get stuck. And I think a lot of homeschoolers might get stuck on, well, I homeschool and I'm going to do it this way, or I'm going to follow the book exactly as it says. And it's a lot more fluid than you might think in the beginning. It looks nothing like the school system. That might
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, raising kids and reading a book is kind of a different thing, ain't it?
it's very different.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not as tidy as I thought that it was going to look. So just be okay
Right.
with that. Another good
Right. Right. Yeah,
advice.
no, that's good. That's good insight. I know another person that I know you're aware of her. I don't know if you listen to her stuff much, but I try to catch her her podcast, and I really like her podcast, Amy Dingman from A
Mhm,
Farmer's Kind of Life. Yeah,
mhm,
and she's homeschooled her sons all the way till now they're out of the house, from on up through high school and all. And
mhm,
she's got kind of a lot of similarities in some of the things that she's wound up speaking about on her podcast. I've never met her, but yeah, for those that are interested in homeschooling, she might be another resource that people can tap into. But yeah, let's switch gears here. Let's talk about something else, a little more spooky. What's what's your concern? What's your biggest concern? And if you're somebody who occasionally hears the news or pays attention to current events, there's a lot of things that are kind of spooky out there. A lot of things that are very concerning to people. What would you say the thing that has you most concerned about currently? What's going on out there?
mhm. Yeah, I am someone that
And,
doesn't
no,
consume a lot of news. Go ahead.
no, I was just you forget about it. Go ahead and I don't want to take your thought away. Sorry.
Um, I'm not someone that consumes a lot of news, but one thing that I think a lot about, and I don't necessarily worry about it, but it pertains to the future generation and kids down the line, the generations down the line. I do worry about not only technology and the impact that's having, because my children are the first generation that was born into a world that had computers and smartphones in the home. And so distracted parents and having no real understanding of what this does developmentally to children is something that I think about a lot. And second to that, I care about specifically, and this is something a little bit separate, the boys, the boys, and um, what the world they're growing up in does to the heart of a boy. Really, in suppressing, the movement of boys and their creativity and their desire to be warriors. A lot of boys are told they're bad if they move around and they're active, and that does concern me, and it's something I feel really passionately about for children, that they are exposed before their brains are ready to technology. And the boy, and even it's just the children. I was thinking of something else too. I think about the fact that our children, we are raising them in a very easy time to live. And historically, we haven't lived like this. We haven't lived in this age of information where we can just, order our groceries and go here and drive here and do this and that. And children have very little space to develop some grit and develop some, just to be sturdy, right? So
Mhm.
I think one of my goals is to teach my children uncomfortable doesn't mean bad. Hard things are not bad. So, pushing through is a good thing. A lot of good things are on the other side of hard work or something
Mhm.
that has a little bit of resistance. And I don't know how much opportunity um, that we're giving children to experience that, because especially 12, 13-year-olds old, this comes back to the technology, they don't even have time to be bored, to have a thought that they're wrestling with and really think through. And so that's something that relates to what I am doing in my own sphere that I think about a lot, and it dictates what I do. Um,
Mhm.
Worldwide, I don't bother so much with things I can't control.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot of what you speak of is all things that is ever present, and it's not anything you can do to change it. It's going to be there, but there are things that you can do to influence that and make it so that it's less of a concern of yours. So you kind of covered that, I think, in a sense, as to what's the thing that you can do to make that not a concern if it's a concern of yours.
Yeah, we don't have a TV in our home. We have a TV on our property. And so we do use that for educational purposes, for family movie nights in a very controlled way. But my goal is to teach our children how to use technology. We definitely include technology in their education because that's a skill they're going to need to know. And so I try to instill to my children that technology is a neutral force, much like a lot of things, tools that we use. It's a neutral thing, and we can use it to learn things, to propel ourselves forward, to be productive, or we can let it use us and it can literally destroy lives. I think we're seeing a lot of that in the youth. It is very destructive in my opinion, and it's not something that's talked about. It's not something that we have a lot of research on, what it's doing to 12, 13, 14, 15 year olds. And so what I am, at least in my own control, is to let my kids get bored, let them not, I don't plan on getting them a smartphone for a very long time until it's necessary, and to teach them what I know about using technology in a productive way. Um, and that's about it.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like kind of how you were raised, huh?
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
we didn't allow you guys. We didn't have cable, right?
right.
You had a couple video games or whatever, and I think we had did we have an antenna where we got like three three channels,
Yeah.
or I don't know. I don't even remember. But yeah, we didn't want you guys. We wanted you guys to play. We wanted you guys to get out and interact with your siblings, and that was
Mhm.
going to be your entertainment. But it's very unfortunate. I think that is a huge concern for the next generation, and I think so many people don't even realize what they're doing. So many parents don't even realize the how formative children really are.
Mhm.
Before they can even speak, they know exactly what you're saying.
Oh,
They're listening
yes.
and hearing everything you say, you know?
Mhm.
And so if you just plop them down in front of a TV, it's very interesting when you watch. It's like you put a kid down in front of a TV, and it's like a bunch of adults sitting around a fire. It's the same thing. It's super mesmerizing. Ever stand around a campfire and watch people? They're zombies. They just sit there and stare at the fire. Everybody stares right at the fire. And that's what
Yeah.
it's like when you put kids in front of a TV. They just sit there and it's just like they just tune out, right? And so I don't know, it's one of those things that I think is certainly a concern for the next generation. Where do we go from here, I guess, is the next question. What would you say? Internet good or internet bad? And what I mean by that is, would we be better off without it or better off with it?
For sure. That is tricky. However, again, I do not see technology as bad. I see it if people, it's like freedom, right? Freedom could be really bad. But if around you, the people in the country are not educated and self-controlled and they have some kind of morals, then it's going to be really bad. If people have no kind of self-regulation, internet is terrible. It's terrible. But the power of the internet is also something to contend with if you're a person that can regulate yourself and stay where you need to be and keep that powerful force. The internet is incredibly powerful, in my opinion. And keep that channeled, just like freedom. Freedom is powerful. We can, if you're a moral person, then freedom's great. But if you're a bunch of, heathens running around, it's really bad. And so overall, if it never existed, it's probably better.
Yeah.
But again, I do not see internet as just bad. I just think it also requires serious education and a moral code for a society.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that is not going away, obviously. That was one of the reasons why we decided to get a computer, because there were so many people at the time when computers were first coming into a thing where people had personal computers in their house. We wound up getting grandma's old piece of crap. Yeah, that piece of crap thing that was like MS-DOS, and there was chat rooms and it was just so antiquated. But it was one of those things that, we decided to, hey, we should probably embrace this because we've got young kids and they're going to be exposed to this and it's not going away. So that said, yeah, there's not in any way that the internet's going to ever go away. But I think that as a whole, societally, I would tend to agree with you. I think that it's a net negative, quite honestly, even though all of the good things that it does present and provide to us for information and connectivity and all of the things that are good, the bad part about it, the surveillance, the control, the people who have the ability to manipulate the population with this technology. I think it's just, and what it's done to people being disconnected. I think that there's been such a change in society, actually, quite honestly. People never used to be at each other's throats like they are now, but that really had changed and accelerated over the past number of years. And I don't know, I think personally it's a net negative. So I would tend to, definitely agree with you.
Right.
Entrepreneur, what do you do as an entrepreneur? What's your business?
Well, so I do a few things. The blog is a new business venture that I revamped. And so that's one. And I run a local photography business. I scaled down. I'm shooting 2 times a week right now, but I do photography and I really enjoy that. And I help my husband run his business. He runs a construction business with his dad. It's a family business. And so I help do the books for that. And coming soon, some of the social media and online portion.
Yeah. What's the biggest challenge to it?
I guess uncertainty, but I love it. I just love the creativity and the freedom that entrepreneurial life provides, but it is uncertain. It's no guarantee that you're going to be successful. So there's a certain amount of risk anytime you start a new venture. It's all entrepreneurial life. It comes of a dream. So it's something from, in my case, it's fabricated in the mind, and you're literally, forming that and bringing it into the world. And that translation doesn't always equate to success. And
Right.
so there's risk, but I don't know if I just love every part of it, really. I think it's exciting to live this lifestyle.
Right. Right. So the people that know you on the blog, they know you as a homesteader and whatever else you've allowed them to know. What might not they know about you that you're willing to share?
Oh, I don't know. Um, I don't know. I do share most things except my private life. I keep that pretty private. I don't
Hmm.
talk about my family a lot, but I value my relationships above everything. In as much as I am concerned about productivity, my relationships and preserving that and setting aside a time for people, friends, family is so important to me that they don't necessarily see on the blog because I talk only about homesteading and things like that. But my children and my friends and my family hold such a big place in my life, and a lot of my energy goes towards pouring into those relationships, and it brings
Hmm.
me so much happiness and joy.
Okay.
Hmm.
Nice. Yeah. Do you consider yourself a homesteader or a prepper?
A homesteader.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, maybe there's some prepping undertones there, but I am more than anything, I don't worry about, the apocalypse or something. I just am very interested to learn new skills. Even if I talk to moms about this, even if you buy bread sometimes, it's very cool to know how to make bread.
Hmm.
Right? Because we do live in the modern world. So I'm not going to sit here and say I never buy a loaf of bread, but I make bread probably 70% of the time, and I enjoy that. And I have that skill now that no one can take from me. And
Hmm.
so I'm a homesteader that likes to collect skills. And I find a lot of satisfaction in knowing how to do things that used to be common knowledge. I just love to learn new skills, to teach my children these things, and it's so I would say I'm a homesteader for sure.
Yeah. Who's this guy?
Oh,
Ron
hi.
said, I'm not a prepper. Yeah. Ron
What for?
said, I am not a prepper. I
That's
choose
just
to be
that's
prepared.
true. I've said that. I
Yeah.
do prepared it. It brings me peace.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that, I think labels are, they are what they are. Oh, I'm this or I'm that. That this is how I see it. And this is just from my lens. I think everybody's a prepper. I
Mm,
think everybody, if you have a home, you're doing something within your home that could be considered, you're a homesteader, right? So what determines a homesteader? Do you have to raise chickens? Do you have to have a big old garden? Do you have to can things? Do you have to bake bread? I don't really
no,
think you I don't think
no,
you do,
no.
right?
Right. No, I consider homesteading, um not that you have to meet these certain criterias, but that because so home the definition of homesteading has changed a lot. It's being thrown around all over the place right now because there's a piqued interest. But homesteading in the modern sense, not the traditional definition, but how people are using it now, I think goes to being a productive household. So you're producing something out of raw materials in your house. So you could have a homesteader that all they do is honey. They raise money. They raise bees. They don't have to do canning and, extended pantry and preserve food and all of this stuff. I think homesteading can be a slippery slope where you start with chickens and then all of a sudden you're like us and you're doing the lambs and the meat chickens and the turkeys and all of everything else because it's exciting to learn these things. But homesteading, I think, is just being interested in traditional skills, knowing how to do for yourself. Usually people have some kind of interest in providing themselves with a more self-sufficient lifestyle. Not that you have to be completely self-sufficient, because I would argue that doesn't exist. But yeah, I do think that how people are using it and how I consider it is that you're producing something and or even making money from your property.
Right. Yeah, and I think the interpretation too can be, how I interpret it is different from how you interpret it, maybe, and that's okay, right? It doesn't have to be this or it have to be that. It's a person. If you want to consider yourself as somebody who's homesteading, then hey, man, like, more power to you. I think that it's just unfortunate that we've kind of gotten into this rigid, it's, this is this or that's that, or put yourself in this box. So that's kind of why I asked you the question, a prepper, homesteader. And I think that there's a tendency for people to shy away from, saying, hey, I'm a prepper or whatever, because of the whole doomsday prepper, the super apocalypse, tactical, without rule of law, the whole thing, right? There's this hesitancy to embrace that, but everybody preps, everybody prepares, everybody has something on backup.
Yeah,
and to me, that means you're preparing, you're a prepper. Where's that tipping point? Do you have to have a tactical vest? Do you have to get body armor? Do you have to get, all these different things to make yourself this prepper? Do you have to have a year's supply of food? No, you don't. So I don't know. That's just kind of my take on it. And I'm riffing off of what you said.
Knowing skills could be just being a prepper, right? Knowing how to take care of things. But people have different motivations. I actually have a blog post on this on my website, what is homesteading. And I go through, some people, it's all about survival. Sometimes it's more about the prepping, and their beliefs and why they do it. For some people, it's they want to live an environmentally friendly, green life. So we all come from different reasons as to why we come to the lifestyle. But I think when it comes down to it, in my mind, is that you're a productive household and not a consumer household, which is very common in our modern day. Very common right now. And we're not even as encouraged as we used to be to keep an emergency supply of water and food. That's not really talked about as much. And I think there's nothing wrong with that in kind of setting up your household to either for yourself or to help people.
Yeah. I think that builds another layer of freedom into one's life if they can in some way become a producer rather than just being a consumer. There's a lot of power in that. If you're growing garlic, which is about the easiest thing you can do, you don't have to get your garlic from the store. And think how green that is, actually, because machinery wasn't needed. There wasn't petroleum being burned to transport it to the store. You grew it right in your yard. That's the green technology that nobody really talks about. But so let me ask you this: what's your next skill, since you're stacking skills? What's the thing you don't have, right? And what's the skill you don't have that is on your radar that you want to next do? Because I've got some of my own, but I want to hear from you.
Definitely dairy. We buy our dairy currently. We have a really cool local dairy that we just took the kids to a field trip up to, so you can get raw milk and it's right here. And so I'm enjoying that. But I am very interested in raising our own dairy products, for milk, for cheese making, ice cream making, because we go through a lot of milk with our kids, and it's a need that I think would be very useful for us, and it would be fun because you can do so much with one product. So dairy. I'm also interested in beekeeping. something we've talked about. It's probably not our next skill, but it's something that I think would be beneficial for, we have over 100 fruit trees on the property. And so keeping bees would be beneficial for many reasons. And I think a fun project for the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, yeah, it'd be interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's, been pretty cool having you on tonight, chatting about a few things. Let me ask you this though, of your livestock that you've been able to raise and all of that, if you had one livestock, would it be chickens? Would it be pig? Would it be lamb? Would it be cow? What would be
Oh,
your one
mm,
livestock?
I have to go with chickens. I mean, having a dairy cow is probably very close to even for me, but since I haven't done that, I've only had the experience raising beef cattle. I will say chickens, because chickens just produce so, like, it's protein, and they just do so much for the homestead and composting, that I would say chickens. But dairy cow is a close second. We are enjoying the sheep, um, but I definitely would pick chickens or a cow, because with the dairy cow, so the cool thing is if you breed it to a beef, then you have your meat as well. So you have your meat, your dairy. They're also can compost a certain amount. So I don't know. I say it's a tie, but because I only have experience doing eggs, chickens for eggs and meat, I'm gonna stick with that because I don't have the experience quite yet doing dairy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it probably would be more productive, but maybe not as sustainable on a small property. We are on a acre and a half, which is a very small scale homestead, and so that's also my hesitation.
Yeah, I think that would probably be a lot of people's choice, quite honestly. Chickens are very versatile and they're easy. They're an easy bar for entry as far as livestock is concerned. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I guess it just depends situationally what type of property you have and what you're planning on doing. I don't know what my answer would be on that, honestly. I'd have to give it a little bit more thought. I mean, chicken's high up there because of, what I just said, but yeah, it's a tough one when you've got, we've got 22 acres and we've got pasture we need to manage and stuff like that. So ruminants are something that definitely would be, high on the consideration for me. Um, yeah, so cool. Anything else you want to chat about tonight, Bree? It's been great having you on. It's been great having people on the live. I've appreciated everybody popping in. Kentucky Sustainable Living popped in. What's up, brother? Going to be seeing Jason in, let's see, October. I'm going out to their festival that they're having, and I'm going to be teaching a class, which is going to be a permaculture fruit tree planting guild that I'm going to be putting on, and that's going to be on the 27th of October, and the festival itself is actually on the 28th of October and the 29th. So
Hmm.
the class that'll be held will be the Friday before. So if anybody's interested in possibly going down there and get an opportunity to hang out with me and maybe learn a few skills about planting tree guilds, yeah, go on Kentucky Sustainable Living's website and get all the details there. But thanks again for showing up, Jason. Appreciate it, man. And we'll be in touch. I would encourage anybody to go and just maybe give Brianna a subscribe. She's got a new YouTube channel, and I did put the link in the description for that, so you can go and check it out. And I think you've committed to putting content out kind of on a regular basis. So what's your schedule going to be for that?
Right now, it's 2 videos a week, and my goal with YouTube is to supplement my blog posts to make the information there more useful, because a lot of people like to consume video content.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
cool. All right. Skanes girl, right on. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody showing up tonight. And if you don't have anything else, Bree, we're gonna sign off for the evening.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.